that piece of ground where they've been and all the roads and all the pipelines, they disturb the topsoil and your fertility goes away. You know, because they're going to bring in noxious weeds on the equipment. They're going to mix in substandard soil with your topsoil. And then once they start the drilling process, you have all the cuttings that come up. And they have to dispose of those somehow. Now, they have all sorts of methods for doing that. And it doesn't matter if they're in the middle of farmland or not. They're going to bury them. They're going to ground spread them. They're going to use them to build berms out of. And this stuff contains all the drilling fluids. It contains all the subsurface minerals or contaminants that have been contained below and been away from your fertile ground. And we have big patches of ground now where they buried cuttings are spread and the ground just grows absolutely nothing anymore. And we're not in a subsistence situation. We raise cattle and hay. We raise Sudan grass and sorghum, sugar beets. You know, so we're raising industrial agriculture here, but the impact it's had on us has been very substantial. We have big pieces of our ground that don't produce anything other than weeds anymore.
You know, the oil and gas industry says to every person that we're going to do this differently than we did it in other locations, right? So if you heard horror stories from Pennsylvania, if you heard horror stories from Wyoming, if you heard horror stories from Texas, oh, we're going to do it differently. We're going to be respectful of you. We're going to do this. We're going to work that. Everybody gets the same.
Yes.
Everybody gets the same. First of all, they're going to use an enormous amount of water, 2 to 7 million gallons per well. And that water will then be infused with all their fracking chemicals, of which we know there are about 700 or 800 of them. Those chemicals are being injected into the ground, right? So when that hole opens up, you have gas start to blast out of it. You're going to have raw methane gas and whatever else is down there. There are 55 different natural gases, right, that come up with the methane. Some of them are very toxic for human health, like benzene, for example, or toluene. The BTEX chemicals, yeah. Benzene, toluene, ethylene, xylene, right? So you're talking about known carcinogens, known neurotoxins, known chemicals that have reproductive effects that are now in the air everywhere, that are not being contained, that, you know, has been a problem, a toxic issue for John and his family, and anyone who's within a mile of any one of these locations, or in some cases 2 miles of any of these locations. 400 to 800 trucks of water are going to go to that site each time, and 200 to 300 are supposed to take that waste away. Now what will happen is they'll spread it on the roads, they'll spread it on the fields, they'll do what they call land farming, which is basically tilling that toxic sludge into the land, which is crazy. Or they're going to inject it back down into the ground through injection wells. I don't know if you have injection wells.
You will.
Injection wells cause earthquakes. That's when you inject the waste down into the substrata, and that creates tremors. So you're talking about a huge process which is dependent on carcinogens, dependent on toxins, dependent on a huge water usage, that water that is then removed from the hydrologic cycle because it is now toxic waste. What concerns me the most in your situation, knowing what I know about the maquiladoras and other places where you have toxic pollution in Mexico, is where's the toxic waste going to go? This is an industrial nightmare because it's not compatible with living near it. It's not compatible with agriculture. It's not compatible with animals being healthy or wildlife being healthy in the area. The earthquake science is one of the most proven, examined things. When you have injection wells, those injection wells lubricate the tectonic plates and they shift. They cause tremors. It's also true that the fracking wells themselves cause earthquakes, minor earthquakes. This has been shown over and over and over again. The USGS has done studies on this. NOAA has done studies on this. There are many independent studies on fracking and earthquakes.
And 0.5 to 2% is they may as well just kick you in the stomach. That's what they're doing.
I mean, in Pennsylvania, for example, standard royalty can be like 12%, right? But Chesapeake, one of the biggest gas producers in the United States, Chesapeake, decided that they had leased too much land. They were on the verge of going bankrupt. So what did they do? They started to charge people to transport the gas. And they managed to totally screw all these Pennsylvanians that they had convinced to frack, right? So they're fracking stuff all over their land. So then Chesapeake decides they're going to charge a fee to put the gas through the pipeline. Oh, and by the way, they own the pipeline. So now they have deductions out of your royalties. And those deductions bring your royalties down to zero. And honestly, that's out of a 12% royalty, right? Or a 15% royalty. They can wipe that away like that. So just imagine what the transportation fees are going to be for your gas underground. The gas that's being harvested in Pennsylvania, that's destined to be sent off to Europe. They're trying to build huge liquefied natural gas LNG ports to ship this stuff overseas where they can get a higher price for it. All the while selling us a slogan of energy independence, American energy independence, right? This is nonsense. This is exploitation for profit. And it's edging out an emerging industry, which we know is going to eventually run the planet. The wind and the sun is going to eventually run the planet. We can do that right now with current technology.